Three, two, fun. My regular wording intro. Welcome to another episode of a podcast with your host, Stephen Maxted. And we have Sara Fortier with Outwitly Inc. with us today. And great to have you on the show today. I've heard lots about you and the company up until this point through our mutual connection, your partner in crime. And your ears are burning likely every time that we have done this. I've been so interested to get you on the podcast and discuss your company and where you've grown to, your story, getting in there. So we'll dive into it a lot today. But Sara, thanks for joining on the podcast. And why don't you share a little bit about yourself for the listener today, and then we'll get into just regular conversation.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thanks also for having me on your podcast. That's great. And I'm also excited to kind of officially meet you and to get a chance to chat with you. I'm Sara Fortier. I'm the CEO and founder of Outwitly. So Outwitly, I started about, 7-ish years ago in 2016. And we're a UX and service design consulting firm. And we also do staffing, which we might talk a little bit more about later. And the UX side of it is maybe something that people understand a little bit better, which is, the design of websites and applications, or web-based applications, mobile apps and things like that. The service design side is like a little bit harder to understand. I think people, when they hear service design, they have no idea what that means. But essentially, if you think of government services of like going to get your driver's license or renewing your passport or something, a lot of these services are really horrible, really clunky. So we do a lot of research with end users to understand the journey that they go through with that organization or that department, whatever that company is. And we do research to map these journeys. We look specifically at the tools and the applications, the portals that they're doing. We shadow them. We watch them go into places that they might get their driver's license. We ask them about their pain points. And then we report this stuff back to the companies or the government, whoever we're working for, so that they can and then we give them improvements about you should really design it this way. And so that's what the service design piece is. And sometimes it leads into UX design, where we'll actually then redesign that portal, for example. So that's a little bit about what the company does.
Awesome. No, that's fantastic. I even just started writing down some notes. We're going to have to talk after this. I knew exactly what you did, but you just queued off a little word checkbox in my head for being like, oh, right, we need to talk about this after the call for sure.
Yeah.
But that hits so close to home for going through experiences and trying to make them better for people, and been the user on the other side of some of those things, whether it's applying for different grants. Although I actually just went through a really seamless one recently.
That's great. Maybe they had a service designer working there.
Maybe it was you guys. Yeah, we don't know. I don't want to name drop too heavy on that one, but there's if it was, that totally makes sense, because it was very easy to understand and it wasn't complicated. I find sometimes as the person going through there, and you probably know this from your research, but you get to the point where it seems so unrelatable to information, for that person.
Yeah.
I don't even think I'm in the right survey thing, or I think I'm in the wrong portal. And meanwhile, it's just really dated and not good flow. Different web pages either go to the same spot or completely different spots from the same.
Yeah.
Location. And it's just a factor over time, right? Different people touched that project, didn't know the original blueprint of it, didn't understand where that went to. And
it might not have been designers working on it. And we try to, the whole discipline of what we do is bringing that human-centered approach, which is actually talking to the real humans who use the services and use the products, and ask them what their pain points are, observe them using the tools so that we can pick up on what we call latent or unspoken needs. And because sometimes you're doing, if let's even say it's not a service that you use one time, but something you do on a daily basis, we often look at employees as the users, and they're using these archaic DOS tools or something to try, maybe caseworkers or something, try to log a caller comes in and they try to log their information, and they're just using Excel spreadsheets. They've got 20 tabs open, different tools that they're using and navigating between. They've got a little notebook, Post-it notes. And they've gotten so accustomed to working in that kind of way that they can't even articulate to you that this is a problem. But you're just sitting there as the third person watching them being like, whoa, this is a really bad experience and it could be so much better, so much more streamlined. And that's where a lot of the innovation comes from. Like when you think of startups and new businesses and stuff, thinking of innovative products, is like a lot of them are competing on customer experience. And to do that, you really have to like understand who your customers are, what their needs are, and how can you bring something to the market that's really going to be way more easy to use and really solving a need.
Very fun. I was just thinking that you probably fill this like gap. I don't know if you often look at it this way, but there's technology out there that's so far ahead. And it's like some people just like will never grasp it, you know, not to make demographics too heavy here, but a real life story from mine of things was just someone I knew, or we'll call it a past relationship, sitting around, grandparents are chatting, and they're like, wouldn't it be nice if we could order different kinds of foods to our door? And it was like Skip was already taken off, like very a real thing. And I'm like, oh no, like that exists. You could definitely do that. And they were tech savvy enough to have a phone.
Right.
But not that next step to do the app. They're like, oh no, that seems like a scam. I'm like, oh my gosh, this couldn't be more perfect for you. But the tech app that, you know, they have the smartphone, they know how to use it to call, but they don't use any of the other like resources on there. Like there's probably like that gap, if that probably makes sense for us. I don't know, listener. Grasp that the whole way where you're updating more like basic stuff, but like, other things that like you're really just trying to get those people up to speed that are like using daily on the portal side of things, or
because we don't like, I mean, the example of Skip or whatever, it's like such a great product and service. And we actually don't do any work now with B2C or like high tech companies. We used to, but actually moved out of that. Now we work more in like government, insurance, finance, healthcare, sort of these really big complex things. And you have to design for all types of users. Like you have to design for the folks who are older and aren't tech savvy and hate technology. And at the same time, you're designing for like the Gen Z or something who is like super up with all the technology. Especially when you're talking about government, then that's like even more of a concern.
Totally. Okay. Government specific, other life experiences popped in my head here, but I remember just some websites being terrible color. How much time do you spend on color? And like, I mean, I'm looking, I always have the website on the screen. You guys have amazing, good color and great branding on here. But some of the government websites are really boring and stale. Like
it's a challenge. So that's a challenge because there's very stringent like accessibility guidelines that have become even more like strict. It's called WCAG 2.1 level AA, I think, is like what you have to adhere to for a lot of the sites. And so it does pigeonhole you a little bit in terms of what you can actually design that is like really cool. Like, so Skip would not have that level of accessibility, you know, required for a consumer app doesn't have that. They're all companies are moving towards this, like making sure their apps are accessible. But there's just sort of different levels. And so that's one aspect of it, the accessibility piece that does limit your design choices. So the design challenge becomes less about, well, how beautiful is this thing, to more like how usable is this thing? Because it can still be really usable, but not like the sexy branding kind of thing.
Very true.
And then the other part of it is that government in general, whether you're talking federal or you're talking provincial, have now all come to, you know, more design systems. They develop their own branding, and you come in and you have to use their brand guidelines. You have to use their design systems or build onto their design systems to design something that is consistent, so that every portal for the government of Ontario, or every portal for the government of Alberta looks the same.
How boring. But probably it's good to follow the process. I get it. I'm just doing it with my own brand, so I get it. But I mean, in terms of
it's a difference. Like, and like the other thing is we work with like established insurance brands, established you know, finance
Yeah.
companies. So they all have their own brands already that you can't go and design something new, but you get a different, like, you know, some of them are a little bit more fun. So you have a little bit more flexibility. Yeah.
Totally. That's good. I shouldn't poke too much fun at the government, but that's just like,
No, you're right.
huge
You're right.
opportunity to like,
Yeah.
make it more user friendly. And if anyone's doing that as you are here, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's more like, I think a lot, because of the work that we do, it tends to be more, let's say, complex things that we're trying to design for, like really complex, intense tasks that people are doing. Then you're thinking less about, you know, let's make this thing really sexy so that a million users can use it and they want to all download it. You're thinking more like, I'm going to change this person's life because they do this like 24/7. And we're going to make it just so much easier for them that their life is less frustrating, or the citizen who is trying to go through this immigration process is not frustrated and they're able to actually understand all the documents and everything like that. So thinking about it like from that perspective, you don't feel like you've lost a lot on the like non-sexy branding piece.
Fair enough. Okay, interesting piece. I was thinking about this too. There was probably, before you got on the call, but like the attention to different like languages and being able to communicate with folks.
Yeah.
That way, is that a big part of? Do you find yourself having to integrate different like what's it even called? Like translate, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes it depends, and like it depends on what. I mean, usually you're just talking French and English for the most part. Like if you're dealing with a Canadian organization, sometimes sometimes some of the applications we work on are international, and in that case, you just take the longest language that there is, and which I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I think, French is, we know, is very long, but, and you make the character count work for the longest language. And then hopefully that means that the rest of it works, but we don't do any translation work or anything like that. So we just work with the devs to like test it out if they give us some sample text.
Oh, that's a cool tidbit though, in terms of like knowing that different words are going to be different character counts for the length of the, you know.
Yeah.
I always think like the Twitter post that it was limited for a while. I feel like they've changed it now to be longer or whatever their X called now. But that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. What take a step back. We jumped right into this because we were kind of chatting before, but what got you started in this, Sarah? What was you doing kind of like to get into this? What was the journey?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know I just started to like explain what Outwitly is about, but I skipped over like, who am I and how did I start my company? But so I mean, I guess to go back, you know, to my education, because I feel like that was the start of me going into this direction, was that I have a bachelor's of industrial design, which is like the design of physical things. So like my undergrad was like designing vacuums and cars and, you know, actually drawing those things and modeling them, and lights and chairs and things that are physical. And then after that, I was sort of like, I really love design, but I don't love the physical piece of it. And there was a master's that I took at Carleton, which is Master's of Design. And that was really more about the I guess the design process applied to business problems, applied to like customer experience as a whole. And that's where I really kind of fell in love with this type of work. So that was 13 or so years ago, maybe. It was like a long time ago, and people weren't really talking a lot about UX. It wasn't something that was like super on my radar, but I happened to get an internship from a friend of like, she had just done the internship. She was like, you should go do this. So I was doing UX research, which is like usability testing, conducting interviews, all stuff that we do now. But I was doing it as an intern, and that sort of really opened my eyes to how research informs design. And I'd learned some of it in my master's as well. And then, I kind of just fell in love with like the tech side of it, like creating apps and researching people who use apps and things like that. And so from there, I actually moved out to Silicon Valley, and I worked there for 4 years for, big tech companies. And I did consulting there with the big tech companies as our clients. And then I also was like I left that company and then I went over to another company, which was like a media company. But then within the media company, they were doing a kind of a startup that was very similar to Pinterest. So they were actually like an influencer company. So, influencers have like deals with brands like Prada and Sephora and Nordstrom and whatever. So this company that I worked for was like top 10 in the States, and they dealt with influencers. That was like the influencers and the brands, and they connected them. This is also like in 2013 or something. So it wasn't something that was like huge or I really understood. But then within that, they also had this whole product department, which was to build this application that they were hoping was going to be like the next Pinterest thing. It wasn't, but it was still good learning experience for me. And so I was the UX director at that company. And then I was kind of sick of living in Silicon Valley and I wanted to move home. I love Canada. I wanted to come home and be where my family is. And so I moved back to Ottawa, where I'm from. And then it's like Chris, my husband that I had met him when I was in San Francisco area. And we were doing long distance for a really long time. And so I wasn't quite ready to move to Winnipeg yet at that point. So I moved to Ottawa. And then, I started Outwitly when I moved back to Canada in 2016. And then it was just me as like independent consultant under the guise of Outwitly. I was the admin person, I was the designer, doing the marketing, all of that. And then I moved to Winnipeg 2 years later, maybe like 2018, and still just me. And it was just me until I became pregnant with our son. And I was like, oh, it's no longer sustainable for me to work 60 hours a week. I probably need to hire like an employee. So that was actually a really transformative moment for me in building Outwitly. It was actually a biological need, like
and time, right? You were forced to do something because you're like, hey, this isn't going to fly. But I want to keep providing the same
going
service
and stuff. So I think in 2019 I might have hired my first employee.
Cool. Who was the first hire? What did they do?
My best friend. I hired her. She had just finished her PhD. It's still my best friend, although she doesn't work for my company. She actually, so in my case, UX design service is actually a really costly role to fill. So I felt like I couldn't put down $100,000 for my first employee or something, like that was too scary. And so I was like, well, I'm doing all these other things. Like I'm doing a lot of marketing stuff. I'm writing a lot of proposals. I'm doing a lot of just like emails. Could I hire someone to just like do all that stuff around me, basically? So that's where she came in and she really helped me with all the other things that go into running a business. And I really focused on the client work.
Fantastic. I like to hear that a lot because it's like segmenting the stuff. I always compare it to there's the documentary that puts on like the funny side of McDonald's, but if you pay attention to like how they break down those roles, it's so specific. And if you can do that with folks and people are focusing on what they're really good at under like with you or underneath you, however it's worded, but basically, they're working with you on your team in those spaces. That's awesome.
And I mean, now we're I think 12 or 13 employees. So the roles are slightly more distinct, but even many of the roles are still playing wearing multiple hats. So hopefully, we'll grow to the next level, let's say 30 or 40 employees, and then those roles become more distinct. And then who knows after that.
Fantastic. So in 2019, you have hire best friend, little risk. We're going to dive into that, but you addressed it right away. You're still good friends. That's awesome. Sometimes it doesn't always end that way.
We were good at communicating with each other. It was fun. I actually wanted her to stay, and then she was like, no, I'm going to go work for the government. And I was like,
maybe we'll work together again one day. That's probably the dialogue there.
Right.
So 2019 you're one, and now you have both 13 employees, right? So that's the 4-year gap there. How led to the other hires? What happened? So
Yeah.
how's
So
that growth?
yeah, so I think, well, interestingly, like I had Jackson, my son, in September of 2019. And then I was like, well, I'll take 3 months of maternity leave, because really, if I wasn't working, then there's no money coming into the company, right? So, but it had at that point really just been me working with the clients, right? So I kind of told all my clients, hey, taking this time off, I'll be back at work in January, kind of thing, right? Which also is like a side note, very difficult to do with a newborn, but Chris helped. But then January 2020, things starting to pick up, business, like, okay, I'm hearing about contracts that are going to come in, and then COVID happened, right? And then everything shuts down. So no, we can't start up this new project. We don't know what the landscape is, and then so that was tough because I had my first employee who I had to keep on payroll, and you want to pay them. And I obviously did pay her, but then I think I only paid myself that year 40,000 or something as a salary, which, is the lowest I've ever paid myself. And hopefully it's the lowest I will ever pay myself. But just because COVID kind of ruined my prospects. And then at like later in the year, like in the fall, it started to really turn around. And then it all was like, whoa, it blew up. Like everyone needed our services all of a sudden. So it was like, oh, wait, we have everything as a manual in-person process and it needs to go to digital. And so this digital services line, which is essentially the combination of UX and services line, was like the key thing that everybody wanted. And so just the contract started to like really come in way more. We were winning more government bids, which we do a lot of. And and then at that point I was like, okay, let's hire. But again, feeling really risk averse, not wanting to hire these really high ticket salaries. So I was like, hire a marketing person, right? So marketing, you're going to do social media, you're going to do newsletter, blog, whatever. And then at that point, I think Tyler was sort of like, okay, I think, it's been maybe a year and a half or something. Like, I think I'm ready to go to my next thing. And so, and then
Tyler was a marketing person?
Yeah, no, Tyler is my best friend.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. She actually, she's a she.
Gotcha.
So Tyler is my best friend. And she was like, I think I'm ready to like move into something else. And I was like, no, don't leave. But it was fine. And so I hired then marketing and a graphic designer to like support marketing. And then also the graphic designer could support me with like reports and, stuff for client work that I had to deliver. And then after that, I can't remember. Then I still did not hire. I was using contractors for the designers because I only had to pay them if I had work. And so that's how, the contract, like the client work was done with me and contractors because I didn't have to worry about paying them if we didn't have work. And then the other roles I started to fill. So then I got like an admin person and talent coordinator because then we got into staffing. And then, which we can talk about for sure.
Yeah, we should definitely do that. There's, curious to know about that. I think I think I see where that's going.
Yeah.
In terms of it seems like such a natural fit doing some work in like based on my end outside of the podcast is a lot of time those proposals do come in. It's a big project for 3 to 6 months, but you're not really going to pay someone the entire year to do that stuff. So dialogue there to understand that. But so you get into staffing as well as an extension. Is that included in like your 13 folks that you mentioned before?
No. So we have like over 40 contractors that work for us full time. Wow. Placed on staffing things. So we're like the 13 employees, and then we've got 40 plus contractors who are working for us at any time, full time, which is so the staffing piece is interesting because when I started Outwitly, I was like consulting. That's what we're doing, right? We go in for 6 months, client asks us to do a customer journey map, research these users, come up with some kind of report or potentially design the solution. And then we're like, bye-bye, and we go away and we pick up another contract. And then I started being asked for, hey, Sara, could you come and work full-time for us for like 3 months to do
with your person to get them?
Right. And I was like, no, I can't. Well, no. So they were asking for me personally to be the one designing. And I was like, no, I'm so busy. I can't do it. And I was like, I could find you someone, like, would that? And they were like, sure. I was like, okay, cool. So then all of a sudden, like,
Sweet.
these relationships that I'd built in the design community for my whole career started to actually like pay me back. Like I was like, hey, I've got a friend. So I'd message my friend and I'd be like, hey, I've got this thing. Do you want to do this? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And I'd take a margin off of their rate. And,
Yeah.
you know, and then that would work out. And they maybe would extend that person, or they'd come back to me and say, could you do this one? I'm like, no, I still can. I'm really busy, but I got another person for you. And so the staffing kind of grew from there. And then start seeing it a lot more now where like government are like looking for staff augmentation. And that's
Totally.
so we just started trying to do that, because it's like it's different than consulting. When in staffing, you're placing a full-time contractor, you have no oversight over their day-to-day. They're not doing things under the guise of like under the umbrella of Outwitly. It's not like the reports they're doing are
Right.
the Outwitly reports or anything. And so you have to let go of perhaps not being able to review the quality of their work, but at the same time you set expectations like, I've found you the best person that we can find you based on what you've said. And now it's kind of up to you and this person to like make it work.
Totally.
And so, yeah. And I was saying to you earlier, is like when you're an entrepreneur, you throw a lot of stuff at the wall and you try a lot of different things to see what's going to work. Like we did startups, we did high tech, we did, consulting for sure. We did workshops, we did, a lot of stuff. And then the staffing thing was sort of out of nowhere. I never really thought I was going to be some sort of like IT recruiter, because that's essentially how I feel sometimes. But then it actually really started to work. And I was like, oh, we have something unique here. Like we have the expertise in UX and service design, so we can actually find the good quality people. Totally. And then we have all this community that we build for our contractors and upskilling and coaching that we offer. And so, yeah, it just was like, threw a lot of stuff at the wall and then realized something is kind of working, and then dig in a little bit deeper. And you suddenly realize like, this is an area that we could really blow up. We could scale this. Whereas there's challenges in scaling consulting.
Totally.
So, yeah.
No, I think that's such a gap. I spent some time working in executive recruitment for a bit. And then even knowing now how hard it is to find people to fill specific stuff. We'll chat more about my stuff. I have some questions I wrote down personally on one half the page and the other, and I'm just checking out in terms of, I guess I'm going to reference like the website here and people contacting you to for these services and stuff. Is it a lot of referral business for you, or are folks finding you guys and reaching out with that in mind for the staffing piece? Or what's that like today?
It's a mix of all the things. I mean, we do, like I said, the public tender process for government bids. So that's open to any business, and you get the RFP, the request for proposal, and then you submit people profiles and you fill out the questions and all of that. So that's one way in which we get the staffing contracts. Another way is that more recently, people have been randomly messaging us through the website, which is a great point for me to be like, our SEO is working. We've been blogging for like several years, and I feel like our SEO is really getting up there. And I think people type in UX staff augmentation and they find our website and message us through there. And then also coming from referrals too of other clients that we've worked with, or just repeat business.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
I would see a lot of that probably come in referral or repeat through that avenue. It's great if you're getting that stuff through the website. It's very clear on here, very clean. But I guess that's basically what you guys do. So it should be as far as that goes. So and where are the staffing piece? Where are these folks located? Are they all?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Is also like from COVID, a lot of like, I used to travel all the time for work. Because clients wanted in person. They wanted to see you physically in the meeting room. They wanted an in-person workshop. And so I was just like flying all over Canada, all over the US for client work. And then COVID happened, and all of a sudden I could be like, you know what? I actually live in Winnipeg. I don't live in Ottawa anymore. Or like, and we can do this on the computer. Whoa, things I'd been telling them for so long. And now they were like, we have to do it on the computer. So yeah, great.
Forced to.
Yeah. So all that to say is like, we are still, Outwitly is a 100% remote company. My employees are dispersed across Canada, like Edmonton, Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, some in Winnipeg. And then our contractors are also dispersed across Canada, as are our clients. So we work with all of the different provinces for the most part. I think there's like some provinces that we haven't done business in. But yeah, so we're all over Canada, not as much into the States, but hopefully we'll grow there too.
Do you do any work in the States right now, or is it all?
We have some clients that are in the States, but we use mostly Canadian resources for them.
Very fun. Very awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
Now, what's the next, I guess, like stage of growth? It feels like you've gone literally 50x from 2019 to now, but like, so you've taken like a couple jumps, and I'm sure this has happened obviously over, you mentioned as well, like a 13-year period.
So like my company 7 years, and then I've been working for like 12 or 13 years. So I think hopefully we continue to grow a lot more, grow our pool of talented people that we can give contracts to. And I think what I'm most interested in now, and like the books and stuff that I've been reading, is a lot more about scaling and like, how do you scale? And I think it's really challenging as like the founder, and it's your baby. And I don't know, this is, I'm sure, not unique to me, but I feel like I can be very controlling, and sometimes I fall into micromanaging tendencies, or I can get really frustrated if something isn't done the way I want it to be done. And then instead of like taking a coaching moment or whatever, I will like take it away from them and do it myself. And then I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And so I have this like let's say the higher self that's over here, and it's like, you should like learn how to lead properly, and your way isn't necessarily the best way, and all of these things. But then you have your like lower self who's like afraid that your clients will think less of you if something messes up, and so it rears its ugly head, and sometimes I try to take that control back, but I'm working on those things.
That's awesome. No, totally very relatable. That's like that is a common struggle when you are scaling of any sorts, because you're handing off responsibilities and you want to replicate the quality that you built the thing on.
And no one will care as much as you care, and so that's just tough, because you want your company to be the best that it can be, but you also have to scale it, and you can't, like, the dream is not, at least for me, to be an entrepreneur who works 60 hours a week into my 50s, and that maybe I like have some employees who are helping me. The dream is to be like, actually, I'm maybe going to work 5 or 10 hours a week, and my employees are actually going to do all the work, and they're going to do it great, and I'm going to make millions of dollars, and like right, that's the dream. So
I was really pushing this book on Chris. He actually bought it, so you should borrow this from him, and it's right next to me. I just finished it.
Okay, he told me about this.
With, or whatever. You gotta check this out.
Okay, so I will.
Either steal it from him.
I will.
Oh no, he got an audio version.
Oh, you got an audio? Huh.
Yeah. Okay,
that's okay.
We'll figure a way. I have some extras here, actually.
Okay, cool.
So let's discuss getting one of those. I mean, there's lots of books with different solutions I really enjoyed, and it just finished, right? It's like one of those things, after you watch a movie, you recommend it.
I know.
It's like top of mind, but it's very helpful for, starting to let go of stuff and be more confident. But it's tricky. I think other companies, you would hope that you're working with too, do understand to some degree that, as you're scaling, they're going through the same pain. In a different way. And I think the human factor there of empathy around, okay, nothing's going to be like 100%, but the only way to get better is to stick with it and improve with you, instead of, the thing that we worry about is someone being like, this is shit for work or
Right.
something,
Yeah,
right? And they're like,
exactly.
you're fired.
And
And
yeah,
that's very
totally.
unlikely. I think
It's
that
very
would like,
unlikely. And I think it's like, and
right.
this is, I have a business coach and she helps me a lot with the mindset
Oh, that's
piece.
cool. Yeah.
And it's all the mindset. It's like, for me, it goes back down to being the little girl that was bullied, right? And it's like, well, I
Totally.
want everyone to like me, or my parents being really focused on what my grades were. So I felt like, and this is
Oh,
getting a
that's
little
interesting.
like
No, that's cool.
emotionally heavy here, but like
It's
mainly
okay.
my parents being like, I felt as a child that they would like praise me and love me if I got the grades, right? So you
Yep.
learn in your adult self to be like trying to please everyone and do all the things so that no one will ever think ill of you, and that you're just like delivering the best thing ever. But
Yep.
actually, like, it's totally false, and you don't need to have that mindset at all.
Do you think that, okay, very relatable
Yeah.
on many levels, right? What you just like dove into. So I'm happy you did.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing. I have a
Yeah.
question about when you started getting coached. Let's go back to that. But the other thing
Yeah.
I was going to say is just picking up vibe here, but is part of the reason you think that maybe you pushed to be like so successful has a little bit to do with the anxiety around that proof of success or whatever around
Yeah,
like
like a chip on my
parents and
shoulder,
friends
I
and
would
stuff?
say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And I feel
Well,
like a lot of people growing up would say, well, you won't be able to do that. Or, and I'm like, oh, just
yeah,
watch me, I will actually. And so I'm grateful for all of those experiences, because I do think it really propelled me to be where I'm at. But
totally.
yeah, no, definitely. I think all of that experience from when you're young really plays a big part in, like, had I been this like really
Totally.
self-confident child, maybe
Yeah, maybe.
I would be like a very chill person right now and I would not have a business. I don't know.
Well, maybe. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe at that point in kind of the expression going, maybe you would have peaked in high school,
Right. Yeah.
or
Who
whatever. Then
knows?
that would have been the
Yeah.
plateau, and then you would have been very unsatisfied with
Yeah.
other things that happen in life.
Yeah.
Um, but that's probably a good thing that didn't happen,
Yeah.
or whatever you went through some like things of discomfort. There's lots
Yeah.
of
And I
quotes
think,
out
and then
there.
you grow yeah.
Totally.
And the coaching does help like illuminate some of those things too. Yeah.
How did you get into getting a coach? I've had one before for
Yeah.
a company that I worked with. I thought it was one of the coolest things that they did, like
Yeah.
for me as an employee, and I appreciated it like tenfold because I'd already started doing my own businesses. It was focused
Yeah.
on their business at the time. That was in the real estate world with Keller Williams. So shout out to them. They had a really great program. Whereas
Yeah.
a team leader, you're kind of like managing the brokerage under ownership, even though they
Yes.
have kind of roles that are with you, just laying that out there. But I had a coach there, and he was a very high level coach within their organization.
Yeah.
Tim was his name, and we spoke once a week, and we got to chat about things. And in this case, he also was the coach for one of the owners, the broker there at the time. So he had a very efficient way of communicating with
Yeah.
me as an individual, and kind of under just basically listening to me chat
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
any kind of like, we'll call it like frustration, because that stuff happens in a company. And then on the other side, he got to go listen to the broker, same
Yeah.
thing, and then bring what we're saying together in a nice way. It was really cool third party stuff
Yeah.
in my mind, right? So you have that going on, and either way, it was very helpful for me. But and I've been debating lately though too, like, is that something I should get again, and who would I
Yeah.
get? Like what like. So, anyways, back to you though. How did that start for you, and when did you make that decision? And
Yeah. So I've always kind of been interested in life coaching. I like follow a lot of life coaches or business coaches on Instagram. And I've kind of dabbled in, group coaching, and always trying to take courses, always trying to educate myself, get better, da da da. But then last year, I think, is when I was like, I really would like a one-on-one coach, because the group coaching I found was like, it was okay, but it's not personal enough. Like, and you're not going to open up in front of like 10 people on a
yeah,
call. Yeah.
totally. I was just thinking that it's like,
Yeah.
even from the business side of things, because you're
Right.
It might not be anyone's going to like take something, but the perception of being vulnerable and opening up about your business is scary.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be like, hey, like we're tight on, we're running a, you mentioned about salaries, but I'm sure many people go through the stage of like, hey, we just invested a bunch for like trade shows, bills are tight, like we might run out of money in a week. What do we do?
Yeah.
Kind of thing, right? And then you
Yeah.
don't want to do that because the face out to the other part of the world in some ways is still everything's good. Meanwhile, it's like the duck kicking underwater. Anyways, sorry.
And for me, I kind of was like, okay, I'm at this stage where I really want a one-on-one coach, and I was started just like I put the feelers out into the universe, and then I found this book that was like called Loving Your Business. And I was reading this book and I was like, oh God, this is exactly what I need. And I just thought, I'm just going to message this woman and see if she's taking other clients. And I thought, no way. But actually she was. And I met with her and I really connected with her. And I thought the stuff that she kind of had taught, she'd grown a consulting business in IT to like a few $1 million and then had sold it for I don't know how much. And so I felt like I was like, could aspire to this woman kind of thing. And then she really helped me understand some of the reasons why I think and do the things that I do. And really the model that she uses and that you've probably seen because it's not unique to her is like your thoughts, your thoughts create your feelings, which create your actions. And so if you can really learn to manage your mind and control what your thoughts are, you can kind of control what your feelings are going to be and what your actions are going to be. And so we would work on that like weekly. And then I worked with her for a few months and then her program kind of ended. And so now I'm picking up to work with her again in September. So I'm excited about that.
Is it then is basically like seasonally with this person? Is it like, okay, we'll do like 5 months together here?
Yeah. So that's kind of just how she operates. Like she's like, I'm going to teach you and we're going to coach like for 4 months. And then you're going to take this away and try to implement it by yourself. And then, if you need me or whatever, then you can come back to me. Yeah.
That's really neat. I've had both a coach. I've gone to chat with people before, professionals, just get stuff off I didn't realize, I think like a coach probably would have been a better fit for what I was complaining about. It was mostly work or whatever, airing those topics. And
but you need someone who you can talk to about this stuff because being an entrepreneur is very lonely and like not everyone gets the challenges that you have to go through. And certainly you can't talk to your employees about it and your spouse might get tired of hearing you talk about it. Poor Chris.
Yes, very true.
And so it's like, it's an outlet to talk about your fears or things that, aren't working well and you don't know how to solve them. You talk through it with them. And I think it's been really valuable for me. And I feel like, the way that you have got you to a certain place, but now you need to like elevate to get to the next place and you need help to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very neat. Very fun. For sure. No problem. I was just going to wrap it up. Best way to get a hold of you. I know we have social medias here. We have Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and your website. I'll include that in here. They're all at Outwitly as far as that goes. And if anyone wants to personally reach out to you, I believe you extended your LinkedIn as well.
Yep. On my
on
LinkedIn. Sara Fortier. I guess LinkedIn/Sara Fortier. You can find me.
Okay, perfect. I'll try to include as many of those in our short clips and in the long version here on YouTube and on our website for you. And great. We got carried away chatting. We could keep this probably going.
We can do a part 2.
Yeah. Deal. That sounds good. Once we get over 100, I'll go back and read it. So that sounds awesome. Well, thank you very much, Sara, for joining us today on a podcast, and we'll let you get back to your work day. Thanks for making time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again.
Yeah, no problem. Take care.
Bye.